Good morning, everyone. It is so great to have you with us for another weekend workshop today. And of course, today we're going to be talking about recruiting top talent for your business with Aileen Edwards from AME Consulting. And I'm so excited to have her here. And AIM Consulting is actually an organization that is based in Quinte West. And so no matter where you are today, I hope that you will find plenty of value in what Aileen has to share. And obviously, this is a topic that's affecting small businesses, large businesses, solopreneurs, even who are looking for people to come on board their team, even in a virtual capacity. So welcome. It's so great to have you. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment in the Zoom chat right now, just to let us know where you are connecting from in the world, as well as if you have a business or you're a part of an organization and you'd like to let us know, we would love to find out where you're connecting from. This is meant also to be a networking opportunity to learn more about each other. So definitely use that Zoom chat as your very own networking space today. Thanks so much to Jennifer and to others of you who are going to just make a note in the Zoom chat to let us know where you're from. So while you're doing that, I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm connecting to this workshop from the Bay of Quinte region, which is the traditional ancestral lands of the Huron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. And my family and I have been privileged to live, work, and play on these ancestral lands for the past 18 years. We're not from here originally, but it does add so much more value to understand who was here first, who were the caretakers of this part of the world long before we were. And so again, like I say, it's such an honor and a privilege to know and to acknowledge those who came before us. And we're so pleased to have so many Indigenous women entrepreneurs as a part of the We Can project. For those of you who don't know me, I don't think I introduced myself, and I'll slip this in now, which is the fact that I am the project manager for the We Can project, which is led by Queen's University, and it is funded by FedDev Ontario through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy Ecosystem Fund. So if you have attended some of our more than 70 workshops up to this point, you probably know me, you probably have heard about We Can, but I find that every session we have some new folks. So if you're a new person in the room, high five to you, welcome, it's so great to have you. All right, so thank you so much for those of you who are noting in the chat where you are from and giving us a little bit of an idea of how we can connect with you. I am excited to welcome Aileen, as I mentioned, from AIM Consulting, and she is going to be talking about a subject she knows a lot about. In fact, Aileen was one of our coaches in the Fusion coaching program, which took place last year. And so we want to just welcome her back to the We Can project as well. She's very involved. And she is just a fabulous human being who I know that we're all going to learn a lot from today. So Aileen, I'm going to give you the virtual microphone. The floor is yours. Welcome. It's so great to have you back.
Good morning. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Oh, geez, how to get me going first thing in the morning on a Thursday. So welcome, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm really excited to share this with you. It's about recruiting. But before we get into that, why don't I tell you a little bit about myself? If I can just, there we go, click my slides here. So I'm Aileen Edwards. I'm AIM Consulting and Leadership Coaching. Basically, what I am is a human resources executive with extensive experience in HR, everything HR, recruiting, labor relations, all of those. And my business that I started back in 2020, I wanted to start working in a small business area. I'm not originally from Quinte West. I live in a small town called Frankfurt with my family, but I'm a big city girl with a country heart for sure. So I wanted to start this business after leaving the corporate world to sort of give small businesses an opportunity to have labor relations consulting and human resource consulting. I also love to coach individuals and organizations with my leadership skills there. So I live in Frankfurt, as I mentioned before. I have a master's degree in a Master of Arts in Leadership. I've also had some education in HR from the Toronto Rotman School. I'm a board member on the Three Oaks board in Belleville. I'm also a board member on the Quinte Healthcare at the hospital. So I'm really excited to be here. So let's get started. Here's a little bit of the agenda of what we're going to cover today. I won't be able to see any of you because I'm using two screens. You might see me flip back and forth, but not to worry. So here's the idea of what we're going to cover it off today about recruiting. And we're going to look at things like, what are you looking for when you're recruiting individuals? How do you develop job descriptions? How to promote your business? So we're looking at discussing recruitment strategies today for small businesses. This workshop will help you get a better understanding of the recruitment process and how to do it well to find the right candidate for your company. So by the end of this workshop, you'll be able to get a better understanding of how to prepare a job description, how to prepare job ads, how to interview, and how to hire your successful applicant candidate. Okay, so what is recruiting? Recruitment, sometimes also referred as talent acquisition, is a process of attracting and finding qualified candidates to join your business or your organization. It involves interviewing those individuals. It's very, very important part of the decision-making process to ensure that you bring on the right person. So interviewing is an absolute must when you're recruiting new clients. It serves as a deciding factor to bring people on board. And it also allows you to screen, to shortlist, and select the right candidate. So it's a requirement that most companies use to bring in qualified individuals. It should be a consistent process that's followed throughout certain criteria, and will assist you in getting the right person for the role. And you'll understand that the right person will be the absolute everything. Let's talk a little bit about the recruitment process. This is a process that you'll follow when you're recruiting new people to come join your business. If you do these things and you do them, you will be able to find the right person to fill your vacancy with someone who is the right fit. So you want to identify your needs. What is it you're looking for? Are you looking for, specific kind of individuals? We'll get a little bit more in depth into this. So you'll want to create a job description. You want to advertise your position. You'll want to screen your potential candidates. You'll want to conduct interviews on the ones that you do want to interview. You'll want to check references. And then finally, you'll want to make the offer. So it's important for you to follow these steps as you go on, and you'll find the right person. You want to find somebody who's going to stay with you for a long time. Recruitment, as we'll talk a little bit later, is a lengthy process. It's a time costing process. It's money involved. So you want to make sure you get the right candidate the first time, so you don't have to keep repeating this process. So follow along those things. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what we talked about just now. Identifying your needs, the position. What are you looking for to fill in your company? Are you looking for somebody who's professional? Are you looking for a student, a retiree, or a volunteer? So think about what you want when you're creating this job description. Do you need somebody more professional, or do you need somebody who's doing more of a back office kind of work? So identify the core duties of the position. So what do you require? You require somebody who's from sales, marketing, somebody who's stocking shelves, or customer service. And who does the position report to? Who will be the person that individual will go to when they have questions? And also identify the experience. What is necessary to complete the core duties of that position? Is there going to be training provided? Those are the kinds of things you want to do when you start thinking about your position. And give your job a name. Is it going to be a sales associate? Is it going to be a bookkeeper? The title is very, very important to people, especially the millennials. They need to have a title. So it's important for you to make sure that you give it a name and create it with care. Think of something that you would be proud of when you name your job. So again, it's important for millennials to have a title. Okay, once you identify your needs, you'll want to create a job ad, someplace where you can advertise your position. So what do you need to complete the information on the job ad and advertise? Things like the rate of pay. Do you want to advertise that rate of pay on your job ad or not? It's specifically up to you what you want to, if you want to put that on. But you do want to put on the hours of work, the days. Will they be working days? Will they be working evenings or weekends? Is there flexibility in the hours of work? You know, you want to make sure that you add that information because hours of work are very important. Weekends and evenings would be very important. It gives the applicants, the potential applicants, an idea of what it is you're looking for and what it is they're getting into. So it's really important. Think about the things that you like to see in a job ad. When you were reviewing a job ad, what things you see in a job ad? What surprises you in a job ad? So just think about how you want to identify your needs in the job ad so that you're going to attract the best candidate for your position. Now, let's do a deeper dive into your job description. So we talked a little bit about identifying what it is that you want to be looking for. So the duties and the responsibilities of the core. I know that small companies do not usually have job descriptions, but I do encourage you to draft something, whether you call it a job description or whether you call it core duties. It's really important for you to identify what the responsibilities of the job are. It really provides clarity for both you and the potential candidate that's coming in, your new employee. So it's important for you to identify what is required. Also, what's preferred. So when I talk about required, is it an educational requirement? Do you require a high school diploma, a master's degree? Those are the minimum requirements before you even consider if somebody you want to work with. Or will you consider things like preferred? So when I talk about preferred, I'm thinking, okay, you can either have a high school diploma or have another equivalent. That would be preferred. So think about those types of things when it comes to education, skills, and experience. Those are the kinds of things you want to think about when you identify and you put down your job responsibilities for the role. So here's some examples of responsibilities. You need somebody who answers the phone. You need somebody who's going to be stocking your shelves, managing others, whatever it is. I want you to really think about what it is you want because your job description should accurately reflect the duties and the responsibilities of the job, of the position. And again, give it a title. It's very important for millennials to have a job title. It's something that's really, really, really important to them. So don't forget to give it a title. And then you can make sure that your job description, not the job ad, we'll get there, your job description, you identify a salary, an hourly wage, what it is that you think that you can afford to pay this individual, and what it is that you think that they'll be able to work with you with, considering what the neighboring what Quinte West is paying. So you don't want to pay somebody $5 an hour when everybody else in your area is paying $15 an hour. You want to make sure that it's competitive. So do your research and think about if it's a sales associate, what are other companies paying so a sales associate in the area? And really get that information down on your internal job description. Then we talk about the required versus the preferred qualifications. Education, licenses, certification. Those are the types of things that you might think about who you want to hire and what kinds of skills they need, what kind of education they need. And then there's your experience. So do you need experience for those individuals? Do you want them to have 3 years experience? Do you want them to have 5 years experience? You know, it's the type of thing that you could put on there. And then in your job, is travel required? Do they need to transport your goods and services to neighboring areas? So if it's important for you to have, if travel is important, it's important for you to put that on your job description. And then with regards to travel, do they need to have their own vehicle? Will you be supplying them with a vehicle? Can they use the company van? And if so, you should also state that along with having travel required, that they need to have a valid driver's license as a requirement. You want to make sure that somebody is legally, or they have a valid driver's license and they legally can drive. Developing a job description is key for the role that you're hiring for. It ensures that you capture the right audience with your job ad because we're going to create a job ad from this job description. So it's important to identify those things that I mentioned before, your job duties and so on. It provides the applicant with all the information they need to make a decision about whether they should apply to come work with you or not. And by having the more information you can within that job description that's going to help you with your job ad, it'll ensure that the applicants will have all the information that they need. And also, too, it'll answer all the questions that they should have. Okay. Let's move into advertising your position. So once you have your job description prepared, you're going to develop an advertisement so that you can post your job. So you want to take the high level position, the high level points that we just talked about from your job description, which will be more of an in-depth, and create a job ad. You'll want to make sure you write a compelling advertisement to get the best possible candidate and to advertise the best way that you can. You need to stand out from the rest of the folks. So do things like include your logo, do a little blurb about us, talk about why you'd want to come work for us. Come work for us because this, and this. So it's important. Your summary should let the candidate know why they would want to come and work for you. So boast yourself. You know, it's important for you to look at your logo and think about, is that going to be an attractive job ad? Will people want to come and work for you? If you're going to advertise your job in both bilingual languages, make sure you put the English first and then followed by the French language. So your high level qualifications of the job, things that you got from there. Include your location in your travel. So if you're located in Kingston or if you're located here in Frankfurt, you want to make sure you include all of that. Decide where you want to advertise. Do you want to advertise in newsprint? Most people don't anymore. That's something that is almost gone by the wayside. Most people will use social media to advertise. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So you want to also think about places like colleges. Are you attracting students? You might want to go into college and post your position there through social media or a new print flyer and post it up there. Tap into all of those things. Maybe you want to get into the job bank at the HRDC, Human Resource Development Canada. Maybe you want to post there. Indeed, think about where you want to post to attract your best candidates and from where, right? So you want to make sure that you want to tell your candidates a little bit about your business and what you want them to find exciting about the job and why they would want to come and work for you. So sell your business when you're advertising. Okay. When you're advertising, again, I mentioned things like you can add your salary range. You know, you can add that. You can also include attractive benefits, like come and work for us. You can have things like flexible working hours. Do you provide meals? Do you provide any kind of bonuses? Those types of things. Talk about attractive benefits that make your job ad stand out from the rest so that people will want to click on it and think about it and come work for you. You want to make sure you explain the application process. And what I mean by that is you want to tell people how to apply to your job. Do you want them to send a resume? Do you want to apply online? Do you want them to phone you? Do you want them to drop in? Now, before COVID, when people could drop in, that would be a great way because you could see your candidate. You can have a quick casual conversation with your candidate. Now you can still do that if you accept people to come in, but they're going to have our masks over our face and you won't be able to see that. But explain to people what the application. So write on your job ad, say, please send your application to your contact information, all of that. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you include that contact information. Otherwise, people won't know where to send their resume. You want to do, here's something I can't stress enough, is you want to review your ad. So you want to make sure that somebody else reviews it and checks for any spelling mistakes. Make sure that you have everything in there. when I do things like blogging or writing, I always have somebody look through to see if I've made mistakes and so on. Sometimes I write like I think, so all the words come out that's in my head. And so I'll have somebody go through and streamline it and make sure that I take extra words out like ands and buts and so on. So it's important. I can't stress that enough. Have somebody review your ad to make sure that you check and get all of your mistakes out of the way. And finally, what you want to do is you'll want to put a closing date on your ad. So you'll tell people, please apply by this date. So they'll know, okay, I have a week to think about really if I want to work on this job, or do I have 24 hours to think about it? It gives them an opportunity to think about how long they have before they get their resume prepared, before they get their references together, and really start to think about how they put things together to get it to you on time, right? Adding a salary range will help your ad stand out from the rest, and it'll let people know whether it's an opportunity to apply. So, you can add your salary range on the low end or the high end. Keep in mind that if you're paying 40 or 50 bucks an hour, 100 bucks an hour, you're going to get all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork. So, and they might be people that might not have any qualifications at all. It's just going to mean a whole lot of resumes that you're going to get coming your way that you're going to have to weed through. So really think about whether you wish to or whether you do not wish to put a salary on your job, and depending on the kind of job that you want and where you're advertising. All right, so let's talk about how to promote your business as a place employees will want to work. You'll want to promote your business in those like arenas, so places where you want to draw talent from. Earlier, I talked about if you're looking for students, go and advertise in the colleges there. If you're looking for a more professional, maybe think about social media like a LinkedIn or an Instagram. Wherever you want to draw your talent from is where you want to promote your business, where people want to come. It's important for you to do that. Advertise your best features. Highlight what you stand for. So come and work for AIM Consulting because we connect with individuals where we can provide human resources consulting. We can help businesses think about, how to get the right candidates for the role. We also do professional leadership coaching. So just make sure you talk about, advertise your best features when you highlight your job and what you stand for. You want to make sure that having that, you'll want to also attempt to show you treat employees with respect. So the way that you promote your business, at AIM Consulting, we have flexible hours. We have people who are dynamic. We have, whatever words you choose, that's the great way to do that. Advertise your flexibility. If it's important, come and work for AIM Consulting. We're flexible with our working hours. Whatever works for you, make sure that you promote your business the best way that you can, right? Maybe you want to say that, oh, we're collaborative. We have a joyful work atmosphere. We, whatever, choose your words carefully. I do want to make sure that you want to make sure you embrace diversity when you're promoting your job. You'll want to make sure that you step out of your comfort zone and advertise in places where you wouldn't normally advertise, because you want to get the right amount of talent, the right talent to come and work your business. So think outside of the box. Don't necessarily think about you want somebody who's exactly like you, people who look like you, people who think like you, people who speak like you, because there's a lot of other talent out there that could be wonderful benefit by joining your company. So embrace diversity when you're thinking about how you promote your business, where you want to promote your business. And you talk about encouraging cooperation in your business. So how do you cooperate with other businesses in the like area or in Quinte area? That's another way to how you can promote your business. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about strategies for effective recruitment. And some of this you've heard before, but I can't stress enough how important it is. So you'll want to create an attractive workplace and job ad. So when I talk about an attractive workplace, when you bring people in for interviews, you don't want to be interviewing them in your stock room with, boxes behind you. You want to create a lovely atmosphere. You want to invite people to come into the workplace, and you do that through your job ad as well. Make sure you use the tools at your disposal to target the right kind of talent you want to work for you. You also want to think about tools like word of mouth. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your reps, talk to your clients, anybody that can spread the word that you're looking for a candidate. And again, use social media. You'll hear me talk a little bit about using social media to attract specific candidates. So if you're advertising on your Instagram account or LinkedIn or Indeed, those types of places, you want to make sure that you do that. Target those kinds of people you want and create the job accordingly. So again, do you want a professional? Do you want a volunteer? Do you want a student? So target your job ad, target those people. Know your ideal candidate. Don't waste too much time with the others. So again, remember how I talked about if you advertise, you're paying $50 an hour, you're going to get all kinds of people coming to your job ad. You don't want that. So know what your ideal candidate's going to look like, and you're going to know that because you've created a job description and you had all the criteria that you needed about who you're looking for. So know who your candidate is. Don't waste your time with others. It's just not worth it. Like I said, recruiting is a very costly, time-consuming venture. So you want to make sure you do it right the first time, and you do it with the least amount of time that you've consumed in it. If you have other people on your team, so you've already got somebody working for you, involve those people. Involve them in creating your job description. Involve them in, the recruitment process. Involve them in scanning over resumes any way that you can. If you can get a second eye to look at all that, it can really be helpful for you to get all the input that you can when you're hiring people. Okay, I'm going to stop there for just a few minutes. I can't see you, but I've got Carrie manning the chat box for questions. So I'm going to ask you if you have any questions at this point.
So there was one question, just a private question about how do you find the going rate for an industry? So let's say you're like, I know what the minimum wage is because that's the law, but what's the going rate for someone at this level? Aileen, where would you send them to find out that type of information?
So there's lots of information on the web if you want to Google your own search. Another way that I do is I just sometimes phone up companies and say, what are you paying your so-and-so person? Get any information you can. How I talked about networking before, I talked about call up another industry, call up another client, call up another person and say, what do you pay your students? What do you pay your professionals? But there's a lot of Google information out there that you can look at and see. HRDC, the Human Resources Development Canada, is also another place of where you can find where a certain individual or certain skill set, what they would be paid for. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it was just one that was sent in to me, so that's great. And I'm going to try to find. I know that there's a Government of Canada website as well. I'll try to drop it in the chat if that's helpful to someone. You were also talking about diversity, Aileen, which is so important. I thought I would just throw something in here as well that, if you are in a job ad and you say you're looking for, you're a diverse business, and then they go to your Instagram account and every person on that Instagram is white and perhaps male. I mean, it's kind of like, you gotta really, if you're saying you're looking for a diverse workforce, you want to reflect that in all of your marketing materials and not
Absolutely.
just pretend, right?
Absolutely, because people will come when you put your contact information, they will go and Google you.
Oh,
they will go and check it out. So if you're not showing up like, you know, how I said earlier, create an attractive workplace. If that's not showing for you, then, you know, people are going to say, diversity. Yeah, it doesn't look so diverse. So think
Yeah,
about
you
those
might not
things.
be able to attract those candidates if you're not really living that in all the different areas.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that was the only question I had gotten privately. So I don't see any at this point. You're probably able to move on.
Okay. And just a couple of questions is for you to think about. You can answer in the chat or you can just think about it. But how have you done this in the past, if at all? Right? What successes have you had? What struggles have you encountered? So start thinking about those types of things about recruitment. What have you done in the past? What's worked well for you? Okay. So here is a little bit of a snapshot about what I've talked about before. Creating your compelling job ad, using social media to advertise, important steps to get the right talent. Target the people you want. So when I talk about people you want, I'm not talking about not being diverse. I'm talking about finding the talent. Go into the pool where you want to find the best talent for your job. It's really, really important steps that you can do that. Know your ideal candidate. From your job description, you're going to know exactly what it is you want. You know, involve others in your business, people who can help you to make sure that you have written your job description appropriately, that your job ad is going to stand out, that you've got your logo on there, you've got some really compelling reasons why people want to come and work for you, that you're targeting the right market. Show it to somebody that can help you decide that you've touched on all of those things. Use your referrals. So when I talk about using your referrals, they really work. You've heard networking, network. You know, I network through WeCan, I network through Instagram, I network through people that come and join my page. Use those people, ask those questions about how they can help you to decide whether to pay somebody, what title you can have, whatever it is. Use your referrals network. It's really great. There are people out there who are just willing to help you in any way that they can. So don't be afraid to ask the questions, right? Do your due diligence and check references. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I wanted to pop it up there because it is a strategy when you're recruiting top talent, is to make sure you do your due diligence. Again, networking with colleagues, and then you can resume. One of the things I really, really want you to think about is you'll want to review the resumes as they come in. You want to decide who you want to interview. So for me, when I put them in, when I get my resumes in, I create two piles, an A pile, a B pile, and a C pile. A piles are the ones I definitely want to interview. They're very attractive. They've hit all the criteria that I've outlined in my job ad and in my job description. The B pile is people that hit some or most of them, and you know, they're a second. The C pile, I'm not really interested in, right? So you'll want to make sure that you do that, and you'll do it as it comes in, because there's nothing worse than sorting through a ton of resumes. So I've worked in organizations with 10,000 people, and you know, I've had to recruit for one position and go through 2,000 resumes. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time consuming, and out of those 2,000, you might find 10 that you want to interview. So do it as you go along. It keeps it daily and light rather than that huge, heavy task at the end, which can be mentally exhausting, right? The bigger your company and the more attractive it is. So, and depending on the talent pool, if there's people out there, a lot of people out there looking for work, you're going to get a lot of resumes. Whether they fit your criteria or not, you're still going to get a lot of resumes. And when you're thinking about looking at those resumes, you want to think about treating those candidates like customers. So when you're A pile, what would you look for in a customer and what would you look for in a candidate? So think about it when you're looking through your resumes. So treat those candidates like customers, not just then, but also when you're doing your interviewing. You'll want to make sure you think about it from that lens. Okay, next thing we're going to do is talk about strategies for effective screening. So screening is, remember I talked about an A pile, a B pile, and a C pile? You want to establish your screening criteria. So what are your minimum requirements? What are the things that you are minimally looking for to make sure that this person has? So they must have a driver's license. Yep, into the A pile. They must have this certain education. Yep, into the A pile. They must have this. So what are your minimal requirements? So make sure you establish those ahead of time so that you can look through the resumes and see if those individuals have that. You want to review the education. You want to review the experience. You'll want to make sure here is be aware and acknowledge unconscious bias. So when I talk about unconscious bias, and I saw this through my many years of career, if you look at a job, an application, and it has somebody that has an ethnic name in it, be careful and be aware that your unconscious bias doesn't decide they're going to put it in the C pile because they can't pronounce their last name, right? So make sure you get past that and see what else the individual has to offer. So keep the rise of unconscious bias at the forefront. Don't be tempted to choose someone who looks like you, has a purely John Smith name, those types of things. It's really, really important. And I can't stress enough how important that is. Review all your applicants and compare them and shortlist them. It's really important to do that. And then you can weed out all the unsuitable applicants, but make sure you establish reasons why. So this guy doesn't have a driver's license. Okay. Or if he does, he didn't put it on his resume. So sometimes people throw things together and they don't share everything of themselves, but too bad for them. They go into the C pile because they didn't identify on their resume that they had a driver's license or they had a high school diploma, whatever it is. You want to weed out those unsuitable candidates. Don't waste your time on those folks. So here's some best practices for recruiting your top talent. Again, create that attractive job ad. Use the social media. You know, it's, as I mentioned before, recruitment is costly. So make sure you do it right the first time. There's nothing worse than spending all your time and money recruiting somebody only to find out that they weren't the right candidate and they stayed for a very short time. And then they moved on because they weren't, you didn't attract the right candidate and they didn't review what you had to offer. And maybe they didn't take the time to really get to know each other. And we'll talk about that as we talk about the interview process and the proper questions to ask. So always create your killer job ad. Use that social media to gain your wider audiences. Advertise everywhere. Always review the contents of the resume. Again, you want to make sure, does this person have the right education? Do they have the right experience? Do they have that driver's license? So be careful to make sure that you review the contents. Be careful of nepotism. Nepotism is when you hire your own relatives. And you know what? If that works for you, that's fine. But keep in mind that we treat relatives differently than we would treat somebody that is not part of our family. And we expect more for somebody. So we have a little bit more latitude. Your family can, you know, come in at 10, even though the job starts at 9. And you clearly set out that it's 9 to 5. They stroll in at 10 and they assume that you'll give them because, you know, I'm family. So be careful of doing that. I mean, as much as we like to give family an upper hand, be careful. It could come back to bite you. This is your business. And this is something that is important to you. And you want to make sure that you hire the right candidate. Do your due diligence and check references. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And again, recruitment is costly. So make sure you do it right the first time. When I talk about hiring relatives and be careful of nepotism, ensure that everyone knows that this is your company and there are specific rules to follow. even if you do end up hiring a relative, it's important because it's your business and you want to make sure that you continue to have a successful business and you have successful people that work with you. Okay, let's talk about interview questions and points to hit when you're interviewing people. So this is typical about interviewing in person or on Zoom. I'll talk about a little bit about Zoom at the next slide, but you want to tailor your questions when you interview people. So you'll want to have a standard set of questions so that each candidate and each interview can have the same points to compare. So, pardon me, make sure you ask the same questions about with every candidate. You don't want to treat this candidate differently than you're treating this other candidate. So have the same set of questions and ask those same set of questions for every candidate. Tailor your questions so you can make sure you get the right candidate. So one of the things I like to do, first off, is let people get comfortable. When interviewing is like dating, let's put it that way. It's like you want to provide them with all the attractive things about you, but you also want to give them an opportunity to see how they are and what's attractive to them. So it's important for you to think about interviewing is like dating, getting to know the person. So here's the one question that I always ask people is, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me why you applied for this position. Um, you know, Tell me what it is attracted you about my company. Why do you want to be here? Just try to probe a little bit more and try to ask those questions. What attracted you to this job? Why did you decide to apply? What inspired you to, pursue this career, if that's what it is that they're getting into? And give them an opportunity to answer those questions. So give them time. So make sure that you set a certain amount of time to interview people. You don't want to rush through it. You want to set an appropriate amount of time to give people to have a conversation, right? And then you can ask them a question about how has your previous experience prepared you for this role, and have them tell you, well, I did this, I worked here, I did that. It's important for them to tell you about their experience. Give them an opportunity to give some examples about what they've done in the past. How did it work for them? How did it go? What didn't work? Those types of things. You want to ask people about their strengths. So what do you think would be a strength of yours? And you're hoping that they're going to tell you something, a strength that's going to be applicable to your role, right? And then talk about, is there any areas of improvement? Is there something, what would you do differently? Those types of things. Again, it's a conversation. You'll want to make sure that you're getting to know people. It's like dating, right? So, you can talk to people and say things like, name 2 skills you've acquired through your previous work experience that you think will be useful in this role. How has your experience prepared you? What is your experience with Microsoft Word? Do you know how to use Microsoft Word? Do you know how to use PowerPoint? Are you social media savvy? So ask those questions that are specific to your job, whatever that is. Make sure that you draw out of them, because again, you want to see, are they going to be the one that you're going to end up hiring in the long run? Do they fit with your company? Do they answer the questions appropriately and professionally? Do they slouch? Do they this? Do they that? You want to make sure that you're keeping tabs as you go through with the individual and you're asking those questions. And how do they ask the questions? You want to make sure that they don't use labels or speak derogatory of their previous employer or people that they've worked with, or a certain group of people. So listen for those types of cues when you're getting the responses back. You can even ask them about things like, describe a challenge you faced at work and how you've overcome it. The dreaded conflict question. Tell me about a time you're in conflict. And people say, well, I've never had a conflict. Everyone's had a conflict. I have conflicts every day, no matter what they are. But frame it differently. Something like, describe briefly a challenge where you faced at work And how'd you overcome it? What did you do? Right? You want to make sure you're getting to know your candidate and make sure that they're fit for your company, right? So the easier it is to hold a conversation for the candidate to answer your question, the better you'll be to get them to perform when they're in the work situation. You can see how they're going to when they're coming to work for you. You can ask them things like, what's your ideal work environment? And people will tell you, well, I don't like to be micromanaged, or I don't like to be this, or I don't like to be that, or I like a collaborative, fun loving environment where people get along with one another. I like flexibility in my work schedule, that type of thing. And you can ask people, do you prefer to work in teams or you prefer individual? There's an incredible amount of questions that you can ask people. And again, do a Google search.
So I'm like, wait, this will turn on. I feel like you didn't care.
Okay, somebody's not on mute, or is it asking a question,
I took
Carrie?
care of it.
Okay, perfect. So again, do a Google search. You can Google search interview questions, and there's a list of them, a host of them that'll come up that you can ask. Pick the right ones that work for you and your organization. It's important because you want to be able to ask those questions. Now, asking questions, you want to be aware of human rights no-nos. If you know anything about human rights and the challenges there, you want to make sure you don't ask people things like, are you married? Do you have children? Those are prohibited grounds, they call them. So you can't hire people or not hire people because of their family status or their gender or their age. So make sure that you can't say to people, how old are you? That's not appropriate. So when you're asking those types of questions, those are not great questions, because if you don't hire that person, they could come back and say, well, they didn't hire me because they asked me if I had kids and I told them yes. So they discriminated against me because I have children. And you can't discriminate against people for their family status. So be aware of those human rights violations, right? And you can ask them their salary expectations. If you haven't posted your salary range on the job ad, you can ask people what their salary expectations are, right? You will finally, what you want to do is you want to be respectful of their time, right? You want to give them enough time to answer the questions, but you also want to answer, you want to, when the interview is over, the interview is over. So make sure that you're keeping a tab on your clock and you're not running over. It's nice when you get to be a gab session, you really click with somebody and you're having a great conversation, but make sure that you allot enough time that you get all your questions answered, right? You want to have that conversation with individuals. Don't grill them. Don't pepper them with questions, right? You want to make sure that it's a conversation, because that conversation is going to help you to see if that candidate is the right fit for the role and for your company. Again, have them give you examples of when they've done something. It's important for that. Once the interview is over, you'll also want to offer the candidate an opportunity to ask you any questions. So they might ask you questions that you might not have been clear of in your ad. So what are the hours of work? What's the next step, they might ask? When should I expect to hear from you? Can you tell me a little bit more about the position? Give them an opportunity to ask you questions about you, your company, the role, any of those types of things. It's important to allow enough time to have that conversation, give them enough time to ask the questions as well. And then let them know what the next steps are, including when they'll hear back from you. It's important that you give them information. If your job requires a test, let's say an administrative, how many words per hour they type, so on, let them know that too. Most often, that's not a requirement. In bigger companies, that's something that's required. But if you do decide you want some kind of test, make sure you let them know that they're going to get an invitation to conduct a test. Okay. let's talk a little bit.
Aileen, can I just ask a question? Christine had asked, I know you mentioned about posting salary earlier, but did you want to just maybe mention that one more time about the pros and cons of posting the salary in the public job ad?
Perfect. So the pros are you stand out from the rest. So, if somebody's hiring a sales associate and it just says sales associate and you've got a sales associate with how much money, it's going to stand out. So there's a pro. You're going to attract individuals, but you can also attract the not right individuals. So be conscious of that. So the pros are you're standing out from the rest, you're being truthful, you're giving people a lot of information to make a decision whether they want to come to your organization. So for me, money isn't everything, but for some people, money is everything, right? But you don't want money to be the driver of why somebody wants to come with you. It should be off to the side. So the pro is it stands out from the rest, but a con could be it could attract individuals that don't even fit what you want in your job ad.
Right. And then a follow-up question was just the previous slide where you talked about asking salary expectations. Obviously, in that case, you wouldn't ask the salary expectation question, I'm assuming, if you had posted the ad, the salary in the ad. Is that correct?
That is correct. So if you've already posted the ad, the salary, they already know what they're walking into. If you have not, then you can say, what are your salary expectations? Because you've already determined what you want to pay for this role. So if you've decided it's going to be between $10 and $20, and the interview, the candidate says, well, I want $30 an hour. Well, don't have that shocked look on your face. Just write it down. Okay, thanks very much. And then you probably can't afford that person. But it also lets you know that maybe that's the person you want. And maybe there's some flexibility to negotiate. Because even though somebody says they want $30 an hour, when you get down to that, offering them a job and having that conversation, they might be okay to reduce that amount because they think your company is a great place to work. You're a wonderful individual. They'll really like to work with you. So, people throw numbers out there everywhere. What you want to do is you want to make sure that when you go through that conversation, you get to the end where you're offering them a job, anything could happen. How do you sell yourself? How do you make them want to come work? Does that answer your question?
Thanks, Aileen.
Pleasure. Okay, let's talk about interviews over Zoom, because that's the way of the world. Look at what we're doing this morning over Zoom. This is, for an old girl like me, it's really difficult to conduct training over Zoom. I'm used to doing everything in person, being in a room with a lot of people. So, but here we are over Zoom. So when you have to interview people over Zoom, you'll want to provide them instructions about how to easily access the call. So you're going to send them a Zoom invite, you're going to send them a link, whatever you need to do to make sure that people have the information. So before you get to the Zoom interview, once you've shortlisted, you're going to make a call and you're going to identify who you want to interview. So once you've identified, you call those individuals and you say, hi, loved your resume, blah, blah, blah. Would you be interested in having a quick Zoom? So whether it's a quick one, small one, whatever. Would you be interested in having an interview? What day would you be available? Are you available this day and this day? Once you write down what day they're available, then put that in your calendar, send them the Zoom link, send them information about how to access the call. Make sure you prepare yourself, okay? Make sure your internet and your audio and video is working well and that you have a good connection. Test it at least 15 minutes before your scheduled interview. So, Carrie and I got on a little bit before everybody else entered the room, and I had to make sure I didn't have any technical difficulties, and I was able to make sure I've got two screens and I'm flipping them back and forth. So it's really good to make sure that you're well prepared. Test it before you get on your scheduled interview. I had a funny background when I joined the Carrie, so I quickly changed the background when I came in. So just those types of things. Prepare yourself for your Zoom interview. Standardize your process. So you'll want each interview to hit all the same points. So as I mentioned before, have the same questions, same criteria. Standardize your process. So when you're interviewing 2 or 3 candidates, you want to make sure that what did I hear from candidate A versus what did I hear from candidate B? And how did candidate C answer that question? And I would encourage you to interview at least 3 people, depending on how many positions you're hiring for. You want to have a comparison. You don't want to go with the very first candidate. That is, may not be the best option. So make sure you hit all the points and you can compare them. Show professional body language. Positive. So show interest in your clients. So when you're interviewing them, make sure that you have that eye contact. Be careful that you're listening to them intently, that you're asking the questions clearly. Make sure that if you're nervous, to slow down and ask the questions. You want to make sure that people understand the questions, so articulate when you're speaking to them. And you might even say to them, okay, just give me a minute, I'm just writing down some points. Or you might say to them, you might see my eyes flip down, but I'm just taking notes, right? Be careful not to interview people when they're in their flow. So try and capture as much as you can, but make sure that you're professional, show them that you're listening, be careful of those eye contacts in your surrounding. So when I talk about your surrounding and saying focus, turn off your cell phone or leave it in the other room. Make sure your cat's not on your computer keyboard or crawling across your lap, or your husband's in the background with the kids running around. You want to make sure that people see you as professional and that you're serious about this and that you want to attract the best candidates. So stay focused, right? And be understanding of technological challenges that people might have. So I live in rural. Sometimes my internet is not my best friend. So if they're having technical difficulties, offer the applicant another time when would be good. Another time that would work well for them. Maybe they need to find another location. Just be understanding that where we are right now, like Carrie said, they're in a large organization and everyone's on the same Zoom platform. So, you're going to have traffic, you're going to have interruptions. So be mindful and understanding of that and give people an opportunity to really sell themselves. And again, don't forget, it's like dating. So you want to provide everything attractive about your company to them, and you want to see what they have to offer. Okay. And these things would work whether you're doing it over Zoom or not. Some of these things anyway. So again, show your professional body language, show your interest, those types of things you would do in any kind of interview, not just over Zoom. Okay. So once you have gone through all of your interviews and you have your selected clients, people that you think you might want to work with, people that fit all of the criteria that you've identified in your job description, and you think that they would be the right candidate, you'll want to ask them for references, right? Those ones that you've selected, you should ask them to provide references. And those references should be people who can speak to their work experience. It can't be your mom and dad. It shouldn't be your mom and dad, right? It should be people who this individual was a direct report to. So a boss, somebody who can speak to their work experiences. So it's important for them to do that. And then prepare your reference questions. And here's a couple of examples. So tell me about someone so-and-so's attendance and punctuality, because you want to make sure, will people straggle in at the last minute, or they have an issue with attendance, those types of things. So those things you'll get from references where they've worked before. Their ability to complete tasks. You want to ask those questions because you don't want to have tasks uncompleted at the end of the day. So do you have go-getters that'll get everything done in quick order? Or do you have people that are going to take all day to complete one task? Those are the types of questions you want to ask reference person when you are doing the reference check. Ask them about their customer service skills. If you are in the business where you have customers and this person's going to be front facing, you'll want to ask how their customer service skills are. You want to make sure that people are professional, that they're friendly, that they're open, that they treat their customers, your customers, like gold, because you want repeat clients, you want repeat businesses, and you want to have somebody who's front facing, who's representing your business to have great customer service skills, right? You'll want to ask questions that are related to the job description and the job requirements. So once you've got your job description, you can ask clients, well, has this person ever done this, whatever this is, stock shelves or sales, how much sales have they done? So anything that's related to your job, you want that proof of experience. And maybe even ask a date. When did the person work for you? You can confirm when the person worked for you, right? It's important that you do your reference checking. There's nothing worse than hiring somebody and then finding out they weren't the right person. Because there are some people out there who can sell snow to an Eskimo. They could do great in a job interview. They can tell you how wonderful they are, but then when you get them in, you find out they don't know how to type. They don't have the experience that you were looking for. So it's important that you check references, that you can find out exactly what people did in the past and how they can work for you, right? I put down criminal reference check down here because if you work in an organization and you have your applicant who may be handling cash, let's say, you want to make sure that that's a reliable individual. You don't want somebody handling your cash that doesn't have a criminal reference check on. So think about it. It may not be required in the work that you do, but it's very normal for organizations to have criminal reference checks these days. So again, if they're dealing with cash, I definitely would do that. Anyone can attend their local OPP and request to have a criminal reference check be completed. They'll just need to bring in their proper government ID. So when I'm a volunteer at the Quinte Health Healthcare as a board member, I had to do a criminal reference check. So I would go into OPP, I take my passport, I take my driver's license, fill out an application form, and they get it completed within a week or so, right? So these checks can either be paid for by you, because there is a required fee, or the candidate themselves. I can't tell you how much they are right now. I don't know. I forgot to look that one up. I'm fortunate because I am a board member. The organization doesn't require, they pay it for me. The last one I think I had in June of this year when I was doing some work for a client, I think it was $35 if memory serves me correctly, but every area is different. So Quinte might have a different area, but it is something to consider when you are thinking about checking references on the person that you want to come work for you. Okay, so you've done your interview, you've done your reference checking, now you're interested in hiring this person. Here's where you make an offer or an offer letter. I encourage you to make sure that you have a letter with your logo, with your template. Make sure you address it to the individual, and you're making this offer. So prepare the offer letter and make sure the letter identifies what you're going to be doing. So I'd like to offer you the position of so-and-so with the hours of so-and-so with the rate of pay effective this date. So put all of those things in there. So ensure that there's relevant information that's contained in your letter, like the hours of work, all of those things. So it's important to have all of that identified. And then you could say, you start this, you will report to so-and-so, here are the core duties of your job, whichever in there. Again, if you Google offer letters, you'll get a wealth of information about what you contain in an offer letter. So you want to do that. You'll want to present the offer to your successful candidate. So you could do that by phone, another Zoom interview. You can present the offer verbally and then follow up with a letter, a signed letter, to make sure that it has your signature on it. It's a binding contract, just so you know. And what I mean by that is that once the offer is made, it's binding. You can't decide to not hire people anymore, right? You can't change your mind without possible consequences, right? And so you can't just say to somebody, "Oh, here's a job, it's great," and then 2 weeks from now decide that's not what you meant, because somebody has taken their time and their effort to go through and have a job interview, have the references checked, all of that. They're in it, and you should be in it as well. So the offer is binding, so you can't change your mind. So be sure that this is the candidate you want. Before you put your signature on a letter and offer somebody a job, make sure this is absolutely what you want.
Aileen, can I ask a question from the Zoom chat?
Mhm.
And it's just kind of going in right here as well about confidentiality agreements, non-compete. Is this when you would have them sign those once they accept the position, or at what point would they sign those?
Yes, so if you have a confidentiality agreement, that would definitely be something. So it wouldn't be at the time of the offer letter. Once you've hired them and you'll get that information, my last slide about personal information, that's fine. So once you've hired them, then you would offer them a confidentiality agreement, and make sure the confidentiality agreement explains everything that they need to keep your organization confidential. With regards to non-compete clauses, those are going by the wayside. There's legislation that's going to come out very shortly to say you can't do that anymore. So non-compete clauses means that if somebody left your organization, they couldn't go to another organization and use what they've developed. So let's say I was at an organization, I developed some kind of, internet something. So that was my talent and that's my thing. Even though it belongs to the organization, I developed it. So they're saying that I can't go over to company B now and do the same thing. But organizations now they're not able to have those stand up in court. So I wouldn't worry too much about non-compete clause. They're probably going by the wayside. But
So
definitely a confidentiality.
So a follow-up question for the can't say that word, confidentiality is assuming then if they're not signing that confidentiality agreement, they refuse, then that makes their contract null and void. In other words, they have to agree to sign the confidentiality agreement.
Yes, and that could be part of your offer letter. So in your offer letter, when you say that here's your work, who you report to, blah, 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 you can say as a requirement of your employment, you need to have a criminal reference check done. You need to sign a confidentiality agreement, have all of that in the letter because it's important for them to know that. And then my next box here is give them time to check the letter and ask questions. So they might say, well, why do you need a confidentiality agreement? And you have that discussion. Well, why do you need a criminal reference check? And you have that discussion. So those are all the things you'll want to put in because once they sign it and they agree to those conditions, that is also binding.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so give them the opportunity to check the letter, ask any questions, make sure it's all in there, no surprises, right? And then they need to agree to that condition of offer and sign that back to you. So at the bottom underneath your signature, you could have a little clause that said, I fully read and understand and accept this position and have a signed offer. Have them sign it back. So it's important for them to have that information and they know what they're getting into. Now, After they've signed up and you're setting them up and you're getting ready to payroll and so on, that's the time when you can ask them some more personal information like their SIN number. You can't ask them their SIN number ahead of time because, believe it or not, you can tell whether it's a male or female through a SIN number. Little HR tricks that we used to do before. When people used to give their resume, they put their SIN number on there, their addresses, all of that. And there are little clues in resumes that would end you up in a C pile. So we can't do that anymore. So it's important to do that. And sorry, I apologize, not the SIN number, your driver's license. There are clues in your driver's license to say your date of birth, your female, male, all of that. So you get that information after you into a signed binding contract. You have the right now, because you'll need that. You'll need the driver's license if they're has to have a valid driver's license. You'll need their SIN number to pay them. You'll need their banking information. Those are the kinds of things that you can ask them for after you've hired them. You can't ask them prior to hiring. Okay, let's talk about some common mistakes in recruiting. It's important for you to avoid these common mistakes because they will take up a lot of your time otherwise. So again, failure to prepare. Remember, job description, job ad, where are you advertising, prepare your questions, make sure you prepare enough time to get the interviews done. Recruitment, I mentioned before, is time consuming, it's costly, and you want to make sure that you get your quality candidates. So make sure that you prepare. Another common mistake is narrowing your search. So only advertising in this arena, as opposed to expanding yourself out. Staying within a small pool instead of expanding your search area will really be detrimental for you. So go and look everywhere. Make sure you don't narrow your search, right? Another common mistake is not reviewing the resumes to pre-screen your potential candidates. You need to review those resumes. You want to make sure that they have all of the things that you're looking for in a candidate. Don't just decide, oh, I like Bob Smith, I like his name or where he lives, and decide to interview him just because. You want to make sure that you review it for those criteria. Not identifying your job requirement. So remember, we talked about your ad and your job description. Not identifying what your requirements are confuses people. You can't make stuff up as you go along. Oh, I need you to stock shelves today, or I need you to drive that down to Mississauga. So it's important for you to identify the criteria. So not identifying what is required for the job leaves people guessing, and they're not really sure. And then they're like, why did I even bother coming to work here? What a sham. And then they leave, right? So you want to make sure you do that. Not interviewing potential candidates. Skipping the interview step, not a good idea. Again, remember I talked about it. It's like dating. You want to make sure, can you work with this person for the next few years, months, whatever? You want to make sure you have that conversation with the individual. You can sell yourself, and then you can find out a little bit about you. So not interviewing the potential candidates or skipping it altogether is not the greatest way if you're a candidate, your right candidate. Not preparing those questions ahead of time. You need to make sure that you stay focused and you get the right questions asked so you can get the right amount of information. Talking more than listening, kind of like what I'm doing, but it's okay because I'm doing the presentation today. But when you ask people a question, listen to their responses. Give them time to respond. Don't ask 3 or 4 questions or 2 questions at the same time. Ask one question, and if you've got a follow-up question, then you can go back and ask the follow-up question. So do more listening to the candidate than talking. The time where you can do your talking is when at the end and they ask you questions. That's when you can you can elaborate more on who you are and your company and so on. That's where you're doing your more talking, is at the end. Failure to complete reference checking. So whether it's a criminal reference check or whether it's a regular reference, you need to talk to people who can tell you about how the individuals worked previously and how that's going to work for you going forward. You want to make sure that you have that all prepared ahead of time. Using unconscious bias. Remember when I talked about looking for people who look like you or talk like you? Make sure, or looking at resumes and they have a different name that is a little bit, you can't pronounce or so on. Just using those, be aware of your unconscious bias when you're looking at resumes, when you're looking at people over Zoom. So be careful if you have somebody who shows up and they're wearing some kind of what am I trying to say? Traditional dress. Thank you. Traditional dress. Be careful about using your bias to disqualify them for the job. Listen to what they have to say. Here's one: rejecting overqualified candidates. Some people do it all the time. Oh, they're too qualified for the job. Well, sometimes they could be a bonus. They can come in and show you ways of doing things differently. So don't discount those applicants that you believe are overqualified. They bring different perspectives to your organization. They bring fresh ideas, new ideas. So don't reject those individuals. And sometimes people think, oh, well, you've got this big corporate person and I just have this small job. Maybe they're ready to leave the corporate world. They've had enough. They've left it behind and they just want to come and work for a small company that's doing the work. So don't just reject them by looking at the page of qualifications, right? And waiting for the perfect candidate. What is that? Who knows, right? So don't spend too much time waiting for that perfect candidates. Candidates that you believe they are or who they are, and using those biases to develop who you think your perfect candidate is. So be conscious that it doesn't disadvantage others that you're looking for. So let's do a little bit of an overview. So today, it's a few things to think about and remember and just review. So prepare your job. What is it you want? What is it you're looking for? Identify your need. You want to make sure you pre-screen those candidates. Make your A pile, B pile, C pile. You want to give yourself enough time to find the right candidate. I have to say, many people rush into recruitment or wait till the last minute. So when I was in the corporate world, I had a standard. It takes about 6 weeks to recruit a person because you want to go into it give yourself enough time to find the right candidate. And then on the other side, if they're working and they need to give 2 weeks notice and so on, you have to build all of that into consideration when you're hiring people. And in my human resources world, we used to say hire slow, fire fast. So take your time to make sure that you get the right individual for the job that you're looking for. Embrace those strategies that I outlined. Make sure you screen, make sure you select, make sure you interview, make sure you do your reference checking, all of those things, and avoid those common mistakes. It's really, really important for you to think about these things. Okay, here's the part where you get to ask me any burning questions that you might have about recruiting.
So if you want to unmute yourself, you can do that, or you can put the question into the Zoom chat and I can ask it for you. It's up to you. I'll give you a moment. If you have any, you can go ahead. But what about duties as required, Aileen? That little phrase on, what does that even mean? And I think a lot of people abuse that, but what do you think?
Other duties as required is just a catch-all phrase that you can have people do things outside of what you have put in as your general job. And other duties as assigned are abused. So again, other duties as assigned could be, well, I want you to go out back and clean up the garbage. That's not appropriate, right? And then someone will say, well, that's not part of my job. Yeah, but it says other duties is assigned and I'm assigning you this duty. So don't even bother with other duties as assigned. It's just it can be very much abused.
Interesting. Kaylee, do you have a question? What about the probation period, Aileen? Where do you find out about legalities around probation periods? Thanks, Kaylee.
So probationary periods can be anything you want them to be. Typically 3 months in a smaller organization, up to a year. I think a year is excessive, to be honest with you. The probationary period is used to assess skill, ability, and fit. So while you've done your due diligence and you've hired these wonderful individuals, you want to give them a trial to see if that works out. So typically 3 to 6 months is what I would use. You can usually tell right off the bat if this person's not going to be the person that you hired, right? So don't wait for 6 months and then realize, oh crap, when you knew 6 weeks ago that that wasn't going to be the person for you. So, but I do encourage you to do a probationary period. And I'll have to tell you, people will be on their best behavior during the probationary period. And then the day after, things may change. Or they may not. They might be the best candidate that you want and things would be absolutely wonderful. So, you know, it's good to have a probationary period because it lets people know this is the opportunity for them to shine. But it also gives you an opportunity to take a look and see, is that the right person for the role?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions as we're wrapping up here today? And I know, Aileen, I don't know if you want to put your contact info up there. It's up to you, but any other questions as we're wrapping up today?
Sorry, Carrie, I can't type fast enough on my cell
no,
phone.
Go ahead.
I have another question about pay structure, actually. So I've been doing some research about the difference between a part-time employee and a full-time employee. And I was wondering if there is different requirements for commission-based employees or hourly employees, and where we can find more information about the legalities of things like this. So if we have an employee that is commission-based, are we able to put in a criteria in the job description that they have to meet a quarterly target and sales targets and such like that? Like, where can I go to find out more information about the legalities of onboarding somebody in that aspect?
Right. So you use the word legalities. I'm not sure that there is a place to find out the legalities about it. I think if you do your Google searches, it's you'll find this information. It is absolutely important for you to put those things in the criteria in the job description. And absolutely important for you to have that discussion with those individuals during the job interview. So if it is a part-time job, you're going to post the ad as a part-time job. So it's already out there. 40 to 15 hours a week, whatever, that's fine. If it's a requirement of the role, you're going to also want to put that as a requirement of the role. If they need to have a minimal requirement for to get commissions, you absolutely need to be transparent about it. There shouldn't be any surprises in recruiting. Again, you want to sell yourself as being an honest employer. You want to make sure that people are quite aware of what they're walking into. There's no surprises. There shouldn't be any surprises at the end of the day. So I don't know about legalities per se. I think the legalities come in when you do something different than what you say. So they promised me they'd pay me $4 an hour, but they only paid me $2. Well, legally, that's not appropriate because you've advertised it that way, you've done it that way. They can take it to the labor board, right? So there's lots of statuses out there about that. If you're really interested in learning deeper information about it, I would, if you have somebody who is does human resources legal stuff, you can tap into those individuals. There's individuals out there, lawyers that do that, or organizations that will do that. HRPA, the Human Resources Professional Association, you might be able to get information from them about that. But I would also make sure that, or the HRDC, like look at the government website, there might be more information about it. But if you're looking for something specific, I would also think about consulting a lawyer.
All right. Any other questions or, oh, and it says that Kaylee was also asking about, oh, maybe we already had this, the probation period. Where do you find out the legalities of that. Do you know about that as well, Aileen, about probation period?
Yeah, so the probationary period, again, is for that skill, abilities, and fit. The probationary period is basically what you decide as an organization. But again, from a legal perspective, if you decide to, let's say your 3-month probationary period, and then, you know, you decide that the person's not working for you, and then month 4, you terminate them, there may be some consequences with regards to that. So when you terminate individuals, there's something called an Employment Standards Act, and there's minimum requirements for when you terminate individuals. Usually when you terminate individuals during a probationary period, you don't particularly owe them anything, especially if you're terminating them for cause. So let's say someone steals from you, that's cause. But I have to caution you that cause is very difficult to prove unless you catch them on video or you do that. You can't decide, well, I don't like the color of her hair and I'm gonna terminate her. That's not cause. So if it's not for cause, then you will be required to pay them something. And off the top of my head, the minimum requirements under employment standards, anybody who's been employed with your company for more than 3 months will get 1 week in pay in lieu of notice. So if you terminate them today, that's considered you didn't give them notice, you have to pay them out. So if you check out the Employment Standards Act, there's legalities of the government website. It'll give you information about what is required if you terminate individuals. So you can look for termination pay and severance pay under the Employment Standards Act, and it'll give you more information about that. If you terminate them within the certain probationary period, or if you terminate them outside of the probationary period, if it's for cause or not for cause. Is that helpful?
Thanks, Aileen. Sorry, I dropped off the call there for a second. I'm not sure what happened. I also put an article into the chat that links to the Employment Standards Act that you were mentioning.
Thank you.
And it is a legal question. That's a really good point. It's related to HR, but it's a legal question. So you should be able to, Kaylee or others, find that as well through there. So
yeah, it applies to employment. Anybody who has employment has some legalities. And it also, the Employment Standards Act also gives you all kinds of information about hours of work, how people can work, like evenings and weekends, holiday pay. It talks about, do you have to pay somebody for Remembrance Day versus Easter Monday? So the Employment Standards Act is a great place where you can go to get all of those questions answered. And it talks about health and safety. You have to make sure you have this kind of organization and provide health and safety for individuals. So there's lots of information there that you can get.
Thank you, Aileen. I want to thank you on behalf of everyone. You've answered a bunch of questions. You've given us so much to think about. Thank you so much. We'll end the workshop for now. And just a reminder to everyone that it will be posted later on our YouTube channel. If anybody needs to get a hold of that, you don't know what our YouTube channel is, then you can feel free to reach out to me. You have my email through the Eventbrite, or many of you know me as well. So thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good